We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
The Supreme Court sends shockwaves through America. Many are thrilled and others, well, not so much. The left is up in arms about these two decisions from the Supreme Court. Roe v. Wade is overturned, with abortion laws going back to the states, and gun rights just got a major boost. But what does it all mean when you strip away the spin and the salt? Well, that's what we're going to find out today. Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. We have a special Supreme Court edition for you today where we talk gun rights and abortion in the light of the recent SCOTUS opinions. We'll be hammering out the myth that a recession is not inevitable and talking wokeism in the US military. This show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. The Supreme Court has not one, but two landmark rulings this week, one on the Second Amendment rights and the other on abortion, that overturns Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Now, we're having a special Liberty Nation extended Talking Liberty segment with Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, constitutional attorney, man about town, and host of the excellent Uprising podcast, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza, Esquire. Now, I do feel it's important to add that Esquire on the end here, Scott, just so everybody knows that you know what you're talking about, even if they don't know that I know what I'm talking about, if indeed I do. Wow. Scott, how are you?
I've got a license to talk about it in any case, so whether I know it or not, we'll leave it to the viewer and listener to decide. Well, now, was that a may issue license or a shall issue license, Scott? I think that's going to be a very important question for us today. So that's a may issue. That's a may issue. So, well, Scott, this really has been a huge week, legally speaking, and the dust has yet to settle. And I want to talk both cases, abortion and gun rights. But first, I want your opinion on something. President Trump, despite only serving one term, at least so far, only one term, he touts, right, yeah, he touts his record quite often. No, let's not say it's in a boastful style, but in certainly a rambunctious style of all the things that he achieved whilst in office. Now, many of those things Joe Biden has sought to roll back since taking over. But I think that a lot of people agree that one of the most significant things that he did was appoint 3 Supreme Court justices, and that this will go down in history as his most significant achievement in terms of the legacy that those justices have helped effectuate. What are your thoughts? Well, this week, that's a great argument to make, Mark. Before this week, it was a maybe. And the other thing to consider, too, is that the justices that President Trump nominated successfully to the court are young. So we're going to have, we have every reason to believe that we'll get 20 plus years more of those 3 justices and their rulings. So, yes, that does seem to be a powerful argument to make, that President Trump's nominations to the court have made the difference. Now, we could argue about whether all those nominations are sort of pro-liberty to the maximum extent they could be. I know that, I would like to quibble with some of those picks, but not everybody can be a Justice Clarence Thomas. Yeah. The funny thing about that argument, by the way, what'd you say? A happy birthday to Justice he Clarence issued. Thomas. So for people who don't know, it was Justice Thomas's birthday on Thursday when the gun case came down. The thing about Trump's achievements in that regard, though, is, what did he do to generate those those achievements? I would suggest, there's something to be said for that. He, it happened to him rather than he did. But in any case, to the extent that we get justices that support individual rights, like in the gun case, I think it's a great thing. Yeah, I think one of the things that most people would agree with is that the idea of actually naming who you'll pick for the Supreme Court is a step in the right direction for any president of any party, regardless of their leanings, because then people know who's going to implement the law of the land over the next 20, 30 years. So let's start with Dobbs v. Jackson. Let me just, before we leave that part of the, if I might, before we leave that part of the program, I would just like to say, there were, I can't even remember how many cases came down this week from the court. I haven't even gotten through all of the big ones, much less the smaller ones. And I think there is plenty of room to criticize some of these justices from the pro-liberty perspective including President Trump's appointments. It's just that they're not the headline cases for this week or this term, I think. So,
okay, so let's get to Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health. Now, this has removed or struck down Roe v. Wade, which has been fairly long-standing. It's 50 years as the law of the land, but I'm seeing almost a magic trick in the Fourth Estate. It's almost like an illusion, and they're saying that this has essentially ended abortion in America, but that's just not true, is it, Scott?
No, what it does is it turns abortion law over to the states, and it says that states may. Basically, what Roe did was Roe prohibited states from enforcing their abortion restrictions, especially in including early restrictions on abortions, early in a term of pregnancy, that is to say. And what this case stands for is the notion that states may indeed regulate abortions pre-viability. And so that's what it means when they say Roe is overturned. It's not like Roe gave people the right to have an abortion, and then this Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health takes away that right. All it does is it says it returns the status of abortion law in America to pre-Roe jurisprudence, which is to say states may enact certain regulations against abortions, including those early in a pregnancy.
Now, I know there are a number of states that have trigger laws in place or trigger regulations in place. So if and when Roe is overturned, which it obviously was on Friday, these laws now take effect. Now, are they with immediate effect?
Well, it depends on the law. It seems like some of them, yes. Tracking down exactly what the right number of these is, I've tried to look at some other reporting on it. It's hard to say. I've seen 22 passed around as the number of states that have this. But in any case, a high number of them do. And for those states, the ones that have the strongest trigger laws, then yes, as of this moment, we're speaking, abortions in those states are illegal.
Okay, what really stood out to you about this opinion? Was there anything that piqued your legal interest?
This is so strange of a case, Mark, because of the leak that I can't even sort of filter it through my standard analysis. It's a one-off. This is a feature that probably, is a bit inside baseball, but the liberals co-authored their dissent, which is to say that Justices Breyer, Kagan, and Sotomayor one of them didn't write an opinion. Like in the gun case, Justice Breyer wrote a dissent, and Justices Kagan and Sotomayor signed on to that dissent. But in this case, they all authored it together. And it was, I think, over 100 pages and over 100 pages as well for the opinion of the court. So lengthy, exhaustive, you might say, opinions laying out their arguments why, and a bit of an oddity in the form of the dissents.
Now, I'm wondering, there's obviously a lot of pushback to this decision, but you and I have spoken about this before. Roe v. Wade was bad law, whether you agree, whether you're from the pro-choice or the pro-life side. Roe v. Wade just wasn't good law, and so it did need something, didn't it? It needed something to move it in one direction or the other.
I want to just correct you and say, when you say good law, what I mean, and I think you mean when you say it in agreement, it was a horrible opinion. The basis for the ruling was Drek, basically. It was like, we want it seemed like a textbook case of outcome-based jurisprudence, which is to say, we prefer this outcome that states can't regulate early term abortion. So how do we get there? Well, let's draw a circuitous path through the weeds of constitutional jurisprudence to get there. And that's why you and I think, both denigrate that decision, if not the outcome in it.
Now, one final question on this topic, Scott. Because of how that opinion was drafted originally with Roe v. Wade, wasn't it almost inevitable that this day was coming?
No, Mark, I don't think it was inevitable. I wish to say that it would be, because I prefer a jurisprudence that honors the plain language of the Constitution, to be sure. That's, why we're here at Liberty Nation doing what we do. But it's not inevitable. It wasn't inevitable. It took, it took what we had, which is the retirement and death of certain justices and the appointments of others by some measure of luck that things have sort of aligned themselves to get to this result.
Okay, we're going to take a short break here on Liberty Nation Radio, and we'll be back with Scott Vicasenta talking Second Amendment victory in just a moment. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I can
others.
do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.